I'm assuming that this is an industry that, quite frankly, has a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth over the past several years. I'm curious from your perspective, though, how do you define, very roughly, sustainable finance, green finance, environmental finance? How are they similar? How are they different? Just from your perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question because it can be difficult to orientate in all of these terms. So I would say, maybe very simply speaking, sustainable finance is the umbrella term that includes all of these concepts inside of it. So it includes, as I mentioned, how the environmental, social, or governance factors affect companies and their businesses and their profitability, but of course also how companies, businesses affect the environment or the society, right? So often when we are talking about sustainability, sustainable finance, it can be used interchangeably with ESG, or some people would use it interchangeably with ESG, investing, and so on. But what I always think is good maybe to understand everything that is included in this really broad concept of sustainable finance is maybe going a little bit back in time and going through the history or evolution of these concepts. So I would say where maybe this is all began, or the origins of sustainable finance, from my point of view, that started very long time ago. It was really more about incorporating different ethical or other values-based considerations into one's financial decisions, right? But when we are talking about doing something like this, or at least in the past, we would be mostly talking about things like boycotting maybe certain products or certain companies, industries, or just in any way staying away from some activities that are not compatible with your own values. So just to give you some examples, of course, for some people it can be staying away from harmful products like alcohol or tobacco. It can be trying to stay away from things like conflict minerals, right, where we don't know about the supply chain, how some of these rare minerals were sourced, and so on. So there was really, I would say, the origins of sustainable finance was really the ethical or socially responsible investing finance, where people would incorporate their own beliefs and views into financial decisions. I would say from there, maybe it has evolved a little bit, but that was, I think, much later, so maybe just a couple of decades ago. And, investors started more looking into what I said before. So how do, for example, environmental or social factors affect companies and their businesses? Because, of course, that can represent risks, but also opportunities in their investment portfolios, right? So, of course, they wanted to act on these and ideally, improve their decision making by incorporating all of these relevant factors, which we can call, that they are extra financial, right? So it's not just looking at the numbers, but also all of these risks that can ultimately materialize in numbers and financial performance. And I would say maybe more recently, and now I'm going to be talking about really the mainstream, not about the dedicated institutions, but I would say recently we also started looking much more into that kind of other direction of influence, and that is how companies and their businesses, what is their influence on the environment, how are they contributing or mitigating, say, the climate change, right? What is their impact on the society, and so on. And I would say, especially when we are talking about the environmental side of things, I think in recent years that was really maybe supported by several global treaties or agreements, such as the Paris Agreement, Glasgow Agreement, which came from the UN conferences held in these cities, where majority of countries in the world they agreed, towards some common climate goals, to mitigate the global warming, and of course they started introducing their own strategies, their own regulation, different taxonomies, and so on, to help companies and their own economies, to navigate this transition to a greener economy. And that's maybe, you know, what brings us back to your original question. So sustainable finance versus environmental, climate, green finance, and so on. So I would say most people would see sustainable finance as this umbrella term that contains also green and climate finance, which would be more specific, more narrowed down to really, you know, perhaps focusing on maybe, you know, preservation of biodiversity or mitigation of climate change and so on.